welcome to another installment of TED Excellence, the show in which I find out that the best learning is fair learning. And I come to you live from my Corona bunker on the moon with Dogcat Fox, a Pepperjack, and all of you. Good evening, everyone. It is Thursday. Terrific Thursday. Yes, back once again into the wonderful world of off-brand TED Talks. And hopefully we'll learn something. Last week we learned something. A pleasant TEDx with Blind Press, talking about vision impairment and so on. If you'd like to check that out, it's on the channel. You can find that fairly easily. So, what do we have tonight? Well, I don't know, although I could make a guess, because the title says, Equity is the Fulfillment of Equality's Broken Promise in Schools. I'll get more into my baseline interpretations of that title in a moment. But first, who is joining me on this Thursday evening for this adventure into edumacation? Jaeger Pony, hello. Attack Alpaca, hello. Zeke Weiss, hello. Mike R, hello. Nathaniel Taylor, hello. The Magister, hello. Swirl Blue, hello. Keever Dam, hello. Jamie Milquist, hello. And then chat jumped, because of course it did. Spittle Buggies, hello. Viror of Ashmedai, hello. 12 Fuzzy Rats, hello. Hell Triangle, hello. Mike Savage, Blarg. Non-Vitae Rex, hello. Bridget, hello. Ebony Williams, hello. No Name, hello. It's a Llama, hello. Tall Person, hello. And let me get to these before they disappear. Oh, boy. Tack Alpaca, thank you for the happy, smiley, cheek-hugging Dogcat Fox. Oh, Dogcat Fox.
Wow. Wow.
No, Dogcat Fox. We love Dogcat Fox. Thank you, Tack Alpaca. And thank you, Tall Person. Hoy, can't watch live. We'll watch in full later. Happy World Philosophy Day. Though I ask you, why? Why? Why is the question? Now, why? Why ask why? Try Bud Dry. Can you imagine, those of you that get that reference, how far into the back of my memory and cobwebs I had to reach just then for that catchphrase? Boy, oh boy. Who else is here? Resolute Germ, hello. And Cynic, hello. Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. I hope not. If I did, I apologize. But such is the way of things. Shell D, hello. I don't think I got that one. All right, so all that being said, equity, let me make sure I got the title again. Equity is the fulfillment of equality's broken promise in schools. Okay, so what is equity? In the common parlance, for those of you not in the know, equity means equality of outcome. So when you say equity, you're talking about everybody achieving the same outcome no matter what. And when you say equality all by itself, you're referring to equality of opportunity. So the title really should say, equality of outcome is the fulfillment of equality of opportunities broken promise in schools. So we are going to artificially level everyone's results so that nobody fails. That's why I had on my thumbnail the question, fail-proofing education. Failure-proofing education. Don't even have my own thumbnail memorized. Is that what's being proposed here? Because that's what's implied by the verbiage being employed. So, all that being said is preamble. Let's get into this. So this one clocks in just under 18 minutes, so a relatively long TEDx. So I want to get started here. I'll start off with a few seconds for sound test. You guys tell me if you can hear it. By the way, today's bingo card is bingo card C. C as in calculator. If you would like to join in on the poll to choose the bingo card for the next episode, be sure to follow me on Twitter, as I generally put out that poll several hours before the show begins, when I remember to do so. And I appreciate the reminders. You know who you are. All right. So let's start off. You guys tell me if you can hear this, and we will proceed as soon as it does something. Okay, did you all hear the applause there? I'll take a moment here and wait. Jose Chacon, hello. Demper W.R. Costin, hello. Brittany Holland, hello. Cannibalistic Wizard, hello. And did I miss anybody else? If I did, you've already moved up the line. All right, everybody heard that? All right, so let's find out how equity is going to solve equality in schools.
Good evening.
Hello.
I want to start off by saying just how fortunate I am and pleased to deliver this message on these hallowed grounds, because it is here that I first received an equity-focused education.
Okay, so you're an alumni of wherever we're at, Dover or something. By the way, sharp suit. I like the suit.
In my travels, people frequently ask me, what is equity in education?
Well, that's exactly my wonderment here. So I'm glad we're starting off with a definition of terms.
In order to properly answer that question, I first assess the individual.
You assess the individual. Why? If the question came out of the ether from a bodiless voice, you would have the same answer, wouldn't you?
It's sad, but far too often these days, that question is used as part of a propaganda campaign aimed at creating equity detours for children in K-12 schools.
Whoa, 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 whoa. What? What? Okay, I got to hear that in full. I'm sorry. I think my mind's been blown. We're not even a minute into this. What?
People frequently ask me,
yes,
what is equity in education?
Yes.
In order to properly answer that question, I first assess the individual. It's sad, but far too often these days, that question is used as part of a propaganda campaign aimed at creating equity detours for children in K-12 schools.
I can't wait to hear what happens next, but just so I understand, you want to promote and advocate for equity in education. Someone asks you, what do you mean by equity in education? You first assess the speaker. I can't wait to hear what that means. But regardless, asking you to define what you're talking about is a propaganda tool to effectively destroy equity in education. Am I not a minute in? Okay, first and foremost, let's go to the bingo card because we've already had some here. Let's see. We can, let's see, I got to select the circle, got to select the color green because that's the one I always select. Okay, so first and foremost, we've already had equity listed off here. So diversity, equity, and inclusion, I'm circling. Secondly, free space because we've already got one down. Let's go over the rest of the cards. Plays victim. I'll be surprised if we don't get there. Leaves out vital context. We're not far enough in. Weightless example, none yet. Anecdote that probably never happened, none yet. Benevolent condescension, might be getting there. Self-vilification or wretchedness, I'd be amazed. Feminism, no. Childhood or family anecdote, no. I'm not knowing what school this is. I mean, if he's coming back to like his junior high or something, and he was talking about this was where he, yeah, not yet. Privilege, not yet. Sales pitch for product or service, no. Microaggressions, unconscious bias, no. Patriarchy, no. Wage gap, no. Mind reading assumes motives. Yeah, I'm circling that one because someone asking a completely benign and context-less question is already assumed to be propaganda. Attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase. No. And equity education is not a new phrase to me. So unless he says something completely new or innovative, that doesn't count. Word salad, we'll see. Marginalized marginalization, not yet. Contradicts own point or argument, we'll see. Systemic institutional, we'll see. A list, not yet. White supremacy, no. Make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason, not yet. Collectivize his own demographic, Not yet. Okay, so far we have free space, mind reading assumes motives, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. 3 squares in less than a minute. Okay.
I spend far too much time talking about what equity is not. Things like the promotion of critical race theory.
Oh, okay. Well, if your worldview doesn't include that in what you're talking about, then okay. Now, given the fact that I have done at least, sort of haphazardly a lot of listening to people describe what critical race theory is, if you're curious, there's a short playlist. Well, not a short playlist. I mean, it's short in the fact that there's only a couple of videos, but I looked at a panel discussion about critical race theory from 2010, long before the current hype ever occurred, and listening to a panel of educators talk about what it is and what it isn't. So I'll be curious to see, as we proceed, whether or not he brings up any of the points that classical CRT brings up. But okay, so you're not here to promote critical race theory. Interesting, you decided to make that clear at the beginning. All right.
Or a tool to indoctrinate white children into feeling a sense of guilt based upon the sins of their forefathers.
They're not their forefathers. They're okay. All right. Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear it. So what does equity mean? Oh, wait. I'm just contributing to propaganda that's meant to derail equity. Oh, okay. So I'm not allowed to. Wait. Does assessing the individual asking the question? When do we get to that part?
Though I will not challenge the validity of critical race theory based upon my lived experiences and those shared with me by previous generations of people of color in this country, I will definitively state that critical race theory is not being taught to fidelity in any K-12 school in this nation.
Then why do you have to warn against that you're not? Okay. Yes, as said in the chat there by Kieverdam, collectivize his own demographic. Yeah. Circling that one. All right. I hate to keep saying this, but we're not even 2 minutes in, and already I have to question the credibility of our speaker's claims. Because critical race theory is and has been taught in schools, K through 12, elements thereof. If you know what the elements are. Now, someone could say, oh, we've never used that phrase in our curriculum. Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, the pieces of everything about it are there, but we've never said we do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry. I don't know who our speaker is yet. I don't know what his position is, but that statement is patently false. Now, he may believe it's true, and that's fine, but he's incorrect.
Country, I will definitively state that critical race theory is not being taught to fidelity in any K-12 school in this nation.
Taught to fidelity. What is that? Okay. What does that mean? I guess I missed that the first time. That is a weird caveat because A, I'm not quite sure what that means. And B, why does it need a caveat? Either it is being taught or it isn't. Not being taught to fidelity. Did I hear that correctly?
That is because it is doctoral level theoretical framework.
It's too advanced for K through 12 kids. Okay. Now, I have made this argument before. All right. I have made this argument before, and I've extended this benefit of the doubt before. It may be the case that true and valid and definitive critical race theory is not what people are attaching that name to today. Okay, now I'm not a scholar on the subject, but I'm willing to extend the benefit of the doubt that at its origins, it meant one thing, and it has been diffused over time to attach itself to things it was not meant to attach itself to. I'm willing to extend that benefit of the doubt, but here's the problem. Whether our speaker or anyone else who says things similar to this likes it or not, the phrase, the title has been co-opted, and it's been done. It's been happening for years. Okay, this isn't some new thing. Again, look on my YouTube channel, check out my playlist, look for 2010, A Critical Race Theory Odyssey. The same subject matter that we hear all the time is explicitly attached to the concept of critical race theory in the modern day. Okay, so for him to deny that he might be right. Again, I'm no scholar on the subject. He may be correct that the actual, true, real notion of critical race theory is not a grade school level kind of concept. Could be. But he is also denying the reality of the moment, where it's not what he's saying it is anymore. And it is being taught in schools.
I feel it's important to make that statement up front in this conversation for change agents doing this work.
Why?
Across the country.
Why?
Now, to answer the question.
Yes.
Equity is giving every child in our education system the tools necessary to succeed.
So, equal opportunity.
That is without regard for color, race, gender, sexual orientation, able-bodiedness, or religious affiliation.
Okay, well, thankfully, you have effectively outlined several of the pieces of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the education amendments that came after. So, and again, I understand we're not in a perfect world, and these things are not necessarily employed as they should be in every place in the country. But ideally, yes, that's how it's supposed to go. So now that you've answered the question, a question that is itself propaganda to derail the question, so what? How is that not equality of opportunity?
But most importantly, equity is the fulfillment of equality's broken promise.
Please explain. And by my asking that, I am not attempting to contribute to any propaganda. I am legitimately curious.
I want you to think for a moment that America has long wrestled with injustice against populations of color.
Okay. I will stipulate it has been a feature or a bug, I guess is probably the better way to put it, of our history in one way, shape, or form for a long time. It has relatively recently started getting better, though it seems like fewer and fewer people want to at least acknowledge that or want to turn back the clock for their own personal gain or benefit. But okay, all right.
It would be grossly dishonest if I ignored that there has been progress, social progress in this country.
Okay.
But still not look at the fact that there are glaring inequities in this country.
Why do I get the feeling that you're not going to give too much time to the progress made, but are only going to look at the bad side of things? I just have a feeling.
None more prevalent than the education system.
System. Well, it's not quite systemic, but works for me. Systemic, institutional. Between talking about education and everything else, we're going to get there. So circling that. Let's see. Was that a list? That was a list. Circling a list. There we go. Okay. So moving on.
I want you to consider this.
Yes.
The Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 changed the landscape of public education in America.
Yes.
When it desegregated schools, it set out a promise A promise that children throughout America would, at a minimum, not receive an education that psychologically harmed them.
I don't think that's what Brown versus Board of Education promised. But setting that aside, as so many schools have, I wonder if our speaker will address racial affinity groups in schools.
And at its best, would grant equal access to children across this country in getting a quality education.
Yes.
I stand here before you as an educator and a first-generation student to not attend segregated schools, and I'm here to definitively tell you that that is a promise that has gone unfulfilled.
Then wait. So you are an example of it working, at least insofar as it can work, but the promise has gone unfulfilled. Did I not hear him correctly? I just want to make sure.
Current school systems struggle to grapple with children who identify in ways other than what their enrollment forms say.
What?
And at the same time, you've got students who are entering our buildings who are eating for the first time since they left school yesterday. And then simultaneously, we have children who are sitting in classrooms who are trying to find their voice to speak out against labels and microaggressions.
Microaggressions on the board. Boy, oh boy. Yeah. Yeah, microaggressions. Okay, so our schools... Is it, and I'm not trying to sound like a heartless individual here, just talking pragmatically, is it the school's responsibility to solve hunger? You know, aside from the meals that are had at the school itself, usually just lunch, maybe, or, you know, microaggressions, identify aside from what's on your enrollment form. I hope he gives us some examples or details.
And then they have classmates who are worrying about where they're going to lay their heads at night.
Yes, poverty, homelessness, these are constant and unfortunately seemingly endemic problems in, well, just about every society. How is what you're talking about going to address those issues, I guess, if you're bringing them up?
You see, the modern school system has to deal with all of these concerns in order to serve our children and to meet the social and emotional learning needs of every child.
I guess in some ways I'd like some specificity though, because I'm not quite sure what, I'm lost.
I frequently draw on my personal experiences to facilitate courageous conversations with educators.
Courageous conversations? I'm going to remember his name this time. It's Singleton, right? It's John Singleton, right? Oh, courageous conversations. Boy, that keeps coming up all the time. You know, that's a brand name. I don't know if you know that. That might be copyrighted by now. But okay, courageous conversation. Boy, you know, for a guy who says we're not going to be talking about critical race theory, he's bringing up a whole lot of elements that go into critical race theory. Glenn Singleton. Thank you, Keeverdam. Yes, I know. I remember that one bit. Glenn Singleton. John Glenn? Maybe that's where I got the John from. Anyway.
I do this because they need to know and understand and be armed with the tools to connect with children. But I also do this because I need them to understand that the man that stands before them today has many of the same characteristics of the children who serve and sit in their classrooms.
Okay, this is almost 5 minutes of preamble and abstract notions. Can we get to something more, I don't know, what's a good word? Substantive? All right, there.
I tell them a story about a boy.
Okay.
A boy who was born to two teen parents.
If you're born to two teen mothers, boy, you're a miracle. Okay, childhood or family anecdote. Circling that one on the board. Okay, so you're born to two teen parents.
A father who would drop out of school,
Uh-huh.
and a mother who would persevere to finish high school,
Okay.
but would go on to raise two children in poverty.
Mm-hmm.
A mother who would have to take off of work in order to attend parent-teacher conferences.
Okay.
Once when I was in the first grade,
Mm-hmm.
I had to tag along with my mother to a parent-teacher conference, where at this conference, my teacher had called my mother there to tell her that going into 2 months of school left, that I was dangerously close to failing.
Okay. I'm just taking this in bit by bit so I don't miss anything. All right.
My mother asked this teacher,
Mm-hmm.
are his troubles due to inability or something else? The teacher told my mother, oh, Cliff Vaughn can do anything that I put in front of him.
Uh-huh.
The problem is you have to stay on him or he just won't do it.
Okay, now, for those of you saying anecdote that probably never happened, nothing about that sounds untoward to me yet. So it doesn't sound like a too perfect for, perfect sake kind of thing. Because whenever we come across an anecdote, I know all of you, as I do, we stop and we think about it for a second. But just so you know, my mind's not on this one being crafted for the sake of his argument yet.
Further, she went on to say, he has the grades to graduate, up to grades to pass.
Uh-huh.
But I fear that if I advance him to the next level, he may get a teacher who does not recognize his ability or will not push him, and he may fall behind.
Wait, so you got done everything put in front of you. You had the grades to advance, but another teacher might not. So this teacher that your mother is talking to is what, being nice to you? Where another teacher might require. I'm curious to see where this story goes. I'm confused.
It was at that moment that my mother made a decision that would change my life forever and my perspective on education.
Okay.
My mother told the teacher, retain him.
So you weren't lacking in ability and you weren't lacking in grades. You were lacking on, I guess, focus or staying on task. And so your mother held you back. What? I don't know what to say to that.
And in addition, she had one more request. She said, I want him in the same class and I want him to sit in the same seat. I sat in that seat and I thought to myself, how could she?
I mean, I guess on sort of a tough love level, it makes a little bit of sense, but I gotta think there's things that could have been done at home or otherwise, or some other mechanism could have been employed than to hold him back a year or whatever the time period was. Because that seems a bit extreme, doesn't it?
When we got to the car, my mother said, Mr. Man, if you want to go to that schoolhouse and you don't want to do your work unless somebody pushes you to do your work, then you can sit your tail in the same seat and look at that same woman next year.
Okay, like I say, on a tough love level, I guess it could work. Now, I guess the question is, did she follow through, or did our speaker make a promise so he wouldn't have to go through the massive embarrassment and shame of being held back a year? I remember Didn't happen to me, thankfully, but I remember what happened to kids that had to be held back. Not a pleasant sight to see on reflection. So
what I didn't understand at the time was that Miss Norwood and my mother were cooperatively working to ensure my success.
Okay. Still, it sounds a bit cruel and extreme.
You see, Miss Norwood was a Native American teacher who was educated in a segregated school system.
Okay.
Who had the fortune of being one of a few minority educators from the segregated school systems to transition into the desegregated school systems.
All right.
My mom didn't for 1 second doubt that Miss Norwood had my best interest at heart.
Because of her race. I mean, I'm assuming that's the point you're making. So if Miss Norwood had been white, then your mother would not have trusted her?
My mother also remembered her experiences completing her education in the desegregated school system after starting it in the segregated school system. So by now, you probably realize that I refer to the post-Brown versus Board ruling as desegregated schools and not integrated schools.
Okay. Let's see. Keeverdam says, make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. I'm thinking I will, but I'm going to wait and see if he circles back to something else here. I'm going to give it the opportunity, but if not, yeah, at least by the end, we'll circle that one.
That's because nomenclature matters.
Yes, nomenclature does matter. It does. So why are you saying that critical race theory is not being taught or employed in K through 12 schools, or has not been? Why are you saying it's only some kind of high-level doctoral thesis? Yes, that matters. Also, why do you suspect anybody asking you for clarification on your nomenclature, i.e., what is equity, is thus propaganda meant to derail it? I'm leaning towards circling contradicts own point or argument, but I'll wait a bit.
You see, integrated schools speak to schools that have teachers, the curricula, and the tools used to educate the children are all representative of the diverse populations of students in those schools.
Okay, and I'm not being facetious here. Check me on this. My understanding of what a desegregated school is, or an integrated school, because I think it's a distinction without a difference effectively, is that the schools are not race exclusive. That's all that it is. There is no racial test for who can and cannot attend a public school or a private school that is as well desegregated. That's my understanding at a basic level of what a desegregated and or integrated school is. Am I off base?
And that simply is not the case.
Okay, sorry, I gotta back up. And I cut him off.
Curricula and the tools used to educate the children are all representative of the diverse populations of students in those schools. And that simply is not the case.
It isn't. Well, I mean, if you want to talk about schools that are employing racial affinity groups, I'll agree with you, or start putting study halls for certain races and not for others, as we've seen videos of, that kind of thing. I'll agree with you. I don't know what you're talking about though yet, because you haven't told us.
I had 3 teachers of color before the 6th grade. And I didn't have another teacher of color for the rest of my K-12 tenure.
And what matters that?
In that same school district today, a child is more likely to complete the entire K-12 tenure without having a single teacher of color.
And what matters that? Because there is only one road to go down if that is a complaint of yours. Well, actually, there's a couple of roads to go down. But first and foremost, if you want to change those, let's say, statistics, you're going to have to hire teachers on the basis of... And if you, and I'm only guessing here, if you are either going to bring up or you are implying that there is an educational benefit to a student being taught by someone who ostensibly looks like they do, then you are in fact advocating for racial segregation in schools. Or am I missing something?
In that district, when the children look at their teachers, they see 92% that don't look like them.
Okay, let's say you swap out all the teachers you don't like because of their skin color with teachers you like because of their skin color. What harm are you doing to any student who doesn't look like them? And is that a level of harm you're willing to accept if you had your perfect world? Because the only way you avoid whatever harm is being implied here in this theory is to segregate schools on the basis of race. Like should only be taught by like. And if you don't think that that's an element of modern CRT, I've got some videos to show you.
That's despite having a minority population of 32%. Research suggests
that students end up with a better educational outcome if they can, I don't know what you want to say, sympathize, associate with, see themselves in their teacher, some phrase along those lines.
That Black children who have a single Black educator by the 3rd grade are more likely to go to college. Okay, so again, by that theory, the most beneficial thing you can do for any student is to ensure that the teacher that teaches them throughout all of their grades and all of their education is of their same race. All right? If that's not what you're saying, then I have absolutely no idea what you are talking about. And if that is what you're saying, because it sure sounds like it, then it sure sounds like you think racial segregation in schools would be a good thing to have returned to us. Or am I missing something? And Black children who have a single Black educator during elementary school are more likely to complete high school on time.
You keep underlining the case for racial segregation in schools. Is that what you mean to do? Because that's what it sounds like you are doing.
Now, Black educators don't just benefit Black students.
Okay, so Black students have a teacher that looks like them, it's a benefit. Non-Black students that have a teacher that doesn't look like them benefit students. Okay. All right. I mean, that's where I have to assume that's where we're going here, which is all sorts of fun. Thank you, Mr. Tickle Trunk. I like the cut of his jib because he's more square than his pocket hanky. Unfortunately, it makes the chip on his shoulder more visible. That is one way of putting it. It's also, I got to say, it's also kind of sad to me that almost nothing of what he said so far is anything I haven't heard from dozens of other people. I can sort of have a notion ahead of time what he's going to say before he says it, because it's old hat at this point. But okay, tell us how race, a particular race without any other qualification, is beneficial to everyone.
Black educators benefit all students because they give white students a head start in operating in diverse environments prior to graduating high school.
So white teachers don't do that for students that aren't white? An Asian teacher doesn't do that for... Okay, part of me just can't even go on with the hypotheticals because it is so infuriating to me what is being suggested here. As you might have noticed if you've paid attention to my channel for the last 5 years. But okay, keep going.
Equity champions the idea that the significant contributions of people of color not named King, Parks, Carver, or Tubman should be a significant part of their education.
What? What is that? What the fuck is that?
So equity is a race-based initiative. A specific race-based initiative. What we started out at the top of this talk asking, what does he mean by equity? Now we have our answer. Tell me again about propaganda.
And also that the materials used to teach those students look like those students.
Right. So again, the way you can achieve the most beneficial educational outcomes for all students is to ensure that both their educator and the materials being used to educate them are racially specific. You know, I'm more sort of disappointed / depressed than I am sort of like outraged at this point. I think my outrage engine might have just you know, thrown a rod or something.
And a big and. The textbooks,
yes,
are reflective of the experiences of students. Modern textbooks have gotten a little better with inclusive imagery, but we must stay vigilant because right now in some places in this country, there are textbooks that describe Africans in bondage as migrant workers.
Okay. So all education has to center around one race in order to please that race. And by the way, I cannot recall a single textbook in my life that ever reflected, quote unquote, my experience. You know why? Because I was a kid and didn't know anything and hadn't done anything. And most textbooks were telling me about things that happened before I was alive. So none of them had anything to do with my experience. What are you talking about?
And that is simply unacceptable.
I would love to know specifically what he is talking about, which books, where they're being employed, etc. But I know we're not going to be told this.
Equity also reminds educators that children are not labels.
You have just monolithed every student on the basis of a label. You have just done this. What are... Oh. You are eliminating individuality and coalescing everybody into racial demographics, uplifting one over all others as important, and, dare I say, superior insofar as educators are concerned, denigrating everybody else, and advocating for racial segregation in education. Okay, no labels here, guys, for the students. No, we're not categorizing, we're not labeling. No.
Labels speak to the circumstances that children find themselves in.
Okay, what labels are you talking about? Give me some examples. What labels are you talking about?
And most times children have zero influence over their circumstances.
I'm, one side thing that I bring up every time I do one of these educational things as well. I appreciate the fact that he brought up his mother's involvement in his education. I'm still wondering at what point he's going to talk about parents' involvement in general in children's education and not the skin color of the educator, more so. Thank you again, Mr. Tickle Trunk. Today is opposite day. Nobody told you is all. Well, I guess not announcing a day that has a significance would be the thing to do on opposite day. But now that you've done that, it's no longer opposite day, but then that also... Syntax error.
Children are not low socioeconomic, Title II, free or reduced lunch, spec ed, AP, or honors.
Those are statuses of circumstance. Yes. Okay. So you want to get rid of AP. You want to get rid of all those categorizations. You want to get rid of all those, what? Okay. All right. What is your proposal in the alternative?
They are children first.
Nobody thinks they're not children first unless you're some kind of weird sociopath lunatic. Let me ask you something. Are teachers first, or are they skin color first? Because I'm getting a particular inkling. But anyway, okay. So thank you for letting us know. Okay, you know what? Benevolent condescension. They're children for... You don't say. All right. Benevolent condescension. Circling that one. I'm also going to be circling white supremacy because, at least in the abstract, him talking about the dominance of a particular race in education as being a problem needs to be tramped down, etc. Circling that one. Word salad. Yeah. I think my last few minutes of mind-boggling might have given away that one. Let's see. Marginalization. I don't know if he's used those words yet. We might be able to get that in the aggregate by the end. Okay. I need to take a break of thinking about everything he said so far and get back to it. Okay, so labels are bad. Categorizing students on the basis of their education, or I should say their academic merits or their socioeconomic status considerations coming into the school. All these things are bad. They shouldn't be there. They should be thought of as children first. I don't know who you're speaking to when you're saying that, but okay, I will agree with you. I will stipulate that before you assess a kid on anything other than the fact that they're a kid, yeah, you should, yeah. Okay, and
each one of them deserving of the care and attention necessary to provide a safe learning space and a space where they can thrive.
Unless they happen to be a student who doesn't match the skin color of the teacher, unless the skin color of that teacher is of one particular skin color, then they're benefiting. But if not, then other people are not benefiting. And what does honors, AP, what does any of that have to do with not? Okay, I already circled word salad, so I don't know how much further I can take this. Let's see. Contradicts own pointer argument, says Kiever Dam. Yeah, I've had to bring up like what 2 or 3 times now, calling back to things he said previously that just he's stepped all over or went backwards on. Yeah. Contradicts own pointer argument. And especially with railing against segregation and then effectively promoting it. That too.
The equity mindset chips away at the core of opportunity gaps.
Okay. Peter Silak Hades 313 asks, what is AP? I haven't heard that before. That is advanced placement. Advanced placement is effectively, you know, you're set ahead in the educational process. So technically, I suppose in a way in elementary school, I was in advanced placement because in 6th grade, I was doing pre-algebra, which was technically a 7th and or 8th grade level math discipline, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, and advanced placement, running start, that kind of thing. Sort of, you know, 6 of one thing, half a dozen of the other. Anyway, sorry, backing up a little bit because I suddenly forgot where he was going.
The equity mindset chips away at the core of opportunity gaps because it tries to eliminate false narratives and deficit narratives, which create and instill a sense of inferiority in some students.
A sense of inferiority like, we can't have you being taught by white teachers because they are less effective at benefiting you than black teachers. Like that.
If labels defined me, I was a out of wedlock, birth to teen parents who would grow up in low income, who would have the misfortune of a teacher actually telling me when I was a young child that I'd never be anything more than a piece of ghetto trash.
Okay. I've given it several minutes. He has not brought up his teacher from back then again. And to this point, now you know what? I can't circle make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. I can't. Because within the context of the talk, he brings up his teacher's race because her race made her a more beneficial teacher based on his theory of reality. So there is a reason he brings it up. I will entertain arguments to the contrary after we're done with this, but that's going to be an uphill climb now. I'm going to back up one more time just so we get the fullness of what he was saying.
Some students. If labels defined me, I was a out of wedlock, birth to teen parents who would grow up in low income, who would have the misfortune of a teacher actually telling me when I was a young child that I'd never be anything more than a piece of ghetto trash.
Did a teacher actually say that to you, or are you talking about a hypothetical? I'm
No student should experience that.
What? Being born to teen parents, living in a lower income situation? I mean, ideally not, I suppose, but you mean that last part, being called ghetto trash? Yeah, I agree. No student should be subjected to that by a teacher. You got me on that one. Do you want to talk about sending a message to students that they probably shouldn't become teachers because certain teachers of certain colors are less effective and less beneficial than other teachers of other colors?
I actually grew to hate the month of February by the time I was in high school.
Because it's Black History Month.
I grew to hate the month of February because it was inevitable that in my classes, some white student would raise their hand and would ask the teacher, why do we have to learn Black history? Because we don't learn white history.
I can believe in the time that he was a student, that kind of thing could have happened. I don't know if it's every time, but that might be a little thin for anecdote that probably never happened. So,
I tell people,
yes,
I believe I succeeded not because of the education that I received in the education system, but despite it.
Okay. So in order to replicate your experience, then every student needs to go through a lousy educational system?
I view the data about minority students and minority teachers through the lived experience lens.
So again, you're promoting racial segregation in education. Or on the alternative, a racial superiority complex in education.
Because it was my K-12 experience that served as the foundation for the advanced degrees that I would earn.
Your experience is not everyone else's. I don't know if you know that.
And I also want to point out my experiences in the K-12 system were not all bad, and Black teachers were not, the Black and minority teachers were not the only teachers who impacted my education.
Well, you could have fooled me because you just basically dissed all your white teachers. I don't know if you remember that part in your presentation where you said that every teacher who did not look like you was less beneficial to you than a teacher who looked like you. Every teacher who did not look like you was actually an impediment to your educational advancement, because that's what you told us. I don't know if you remember that part.
For every Miss Norwood, Miss Clark, who never raised her voice, but when she looked at you, you understood she meant business and who was in charge.
Okay, I remember Miss Norwood. I must have forgotten who Miss Clark is if he talked about her, so I don't have a reference.
And Dr. Morris, who found creative ways
Oh.
to handle distractions in the classroom without contributing to the discipline disparities.
Okay, well, you need to tell me what was Miss Clark's race and what was Dr. Moore's race, because that's very important now. You have made that a very important element of my consideration of your education. See how that works?
I had Bill Walls, Sue Lure, and Dave Frederick.
And what was their skin colors? I need this for, professional reference here to sort of meter out whether they were a beneficial teacher to you or a passively detrimental teacher to you. I need to understand this.
Sue Lure.
Yeah.
She was a history teacher who kept an additional notebook with supplemental notes that contained the significant contributions of people not included in the text.
I still need to know what her skin color is. You haven't given that. That's the important part. I need you to tell me her race first and foremost. That is the operative element to any consideration of a teacher's value in education. Correct?
And Mr. Walls, who challenged his students to think about the perspectives and the information that was not in the textbook. You see, they weren't the norm because they went out of their way to make sure that they were giving students a diversified curriculum and that their content was diversified.
Oh, okay. So by implication, you're telling me that these teachers were at least not white, right? Because no white teacher would behave that way. Is that, I'm really trying to understand the message here.
And then there was Dave Frederick. Dave Frederick once walked me out of his social studies class, and he walked me into the area in our high school where honor students were taking classes. He pointed in the window and he said, "That's where you belong."
Oh, you mean you belong as a label? Oh, okay.
I took one look at the students in that class and I said, not gonna happen.
Oh, why is that? After taking one look at them, I can't imagine where this is going.
Those are not my people.
Because they all had pocket protectors and glasses. They wore button-up shirts. What exactly was it that on site you knew you did not belong there?
You see, when I looked in that class,
yeah,
and I didn't see another face that looked like mine,
yeah,
I was reminded
yeah,
of all the years when I was one of only one or two minority children in all my classes.
And so the way to solve that problem is to restrict yourself from going beyond the barriers you see in front of you or have conjured into existence. Please tell me you eventually changed your mind on this subject.
Especially once we got to a place where students were placed in tracks in accordance with their academic ability.
What? What? Why wouldn't you? What?
I saw the students in that classroom as an extension of the trauma that I had been experiencing in the K-12 school system.
What? What is that? What the fuck is that?
Okay. I guess that's what you saw.
Yes, folks, some children are traumatized in our school system.
Okay.
When I landed at Delaware State University,
did you see enough people that you like to look at to stay? Do you understand why I have to ask that question now?
it was the first time that I was in a place where the education was designed by people who look like me, for people like me, and it made a world of difference.
So you're a racial supremacist and segregationist. Okay.
While I was here, I was academically challenged and academically nourished while being celebrated for being my authentic self. That in and of itself is the core of an equitable education experience.
So, critical race theory. Got it.
I would later learn Miss Norwood, Miss Clark, and Dr. Morse were all educated at this institution. And I also realized that the teachers who most impacted me and my educational journey were equity focused.
Equity focused. Which means they either were or wholly centered Black people. That's what equity focused means. That's what I have come to understand it to mean from our speaker in this presentation.
And that's why I say that equity is the fulfillment of equality's broken promise. Thank you.
I have been on a bit of an emotional bell curve, you might have heard over the course of this talk. Kind of subdued, irritated, but otherwise stable, mostly sad and or disappointed. And then a rapid crescendo of outrage and confusion. And then back down to the just, yeah, the solemn acceptance of a story I've heard far too many times now. Okay, well, while I try not to exercise my English major any more than I absolutely have to, let's go to the bingo card and see where we're at. We have more squares than that circle. Let me update the card here real quick. There we go. All right, so I'm going to go over the card one more time by myself. If you have arguments for squares to be circled, please hold on to them until after I've done my review. And then we'll see if there's any other squares to be circled. Plays victim. Yep. Yep. Leaves out vital context. Yep. Never gave an example, never gave a definition, never gave, or not definition, active example of what he was talking about, what textbook, explain how any of this is supposed to work in the classroom, so on. Weightless example. A weightless example. Again, you have to consider everything that was said in the context of the presentation. If the presentation is its own little universe unto itself, it's not a matter of do you not like the example or do you think it's a dumb example. The question is there an example given that did not pertain to the argument being made or the presentation being presented? I'm inclined. I might I might leave it blank for now, but I'll bring it up afterward. I'm inclined to say that I looked at the honors class and said, this is not my people. That example functionally said and pertained to nothing of his argument. That was just his personal philosophy/belief. Now, that example did inform a lot about his mindset then and apparently his mindset now, because he carried it on into his experience at Delaware College. I don't know. I have to put this into the context of the presentation, so I'm not sure. I'm going to move on. We'll revisit that. Anecdote that probably never happened. You know, none of the anecdotes given either sounded A, unbelievable, or B, ultimately sounded self-serving. I mean, let's be honest, that honors class anecdote, he might have been comfortable with the message he was putting out there about himself, but it definitely didn't do him any favors. So I can believe that happened. Given his attitude and his philosophy presented, I can believe it happened. So I don't have any reason to circle that one, at least not yet. Self-vilification or wretchedness. No, he mentioned a lot of things that were hardships or obstacles in his life, but I never got a sense that he defined himself by them. That he was actually obviously very proud of the fact that he succeeded, as he said, despite those things, despite those labels, etc. So I don't think there was any self-vilification or wretchedness there. Feminism, no, he didn't really dwell on gender all that much at all, really. That wasn't a key part of the talk. Privilege. I mean, that can be extrapolated from a lot of the things he was talking about. Yeah, I'm going to circle privilege because given the disparities he was talking about, given that he also made it very racial, etc., and even if he wasn't talking about racial, there was economics he brought up and people having other advantages. So I'm going to circle that one. Sales pitch for product or service. I was surprised. He did mention that he's an educator, but he didn't talk about the school he goes to or the school that he works at. He didn't bring up some kind of organization that he is a member of or some charity or so there wasn't a sales pitch for product or service there as far as I'm concerned. Again, if you have an argument otherwise, hold on to it for a second. Sorry, I need to update the card. There we go. Patriarchy. Again, he didn't bring up gender dynamics in that way. So I can't say that. Wage gap. Just talking about socioeconomic differences does not necessarily qualify as a wage gap. You'd have to bring up a specific differential in earnings or wages as part of his presentation. And yes, he did bring up economic disparities between, certain circumstances or students, but he never focused on pay disparity in some way, shape, or form. So I can't say so on that one. Attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase. I honestly didn't hear anything in there that was new to me. So, I mean, I'm my own barometer on that one, but nothing he brought up was new. Marginalized marginalization. Yeah, he did bring up the emphasis on minority, segregation, so on. Yeah, so even if not, I'm not sure he said it ever literally, but in the aggregate, certainly the concept was presented. Let's see. Thank you, Keeverdam. We have a bingo diagonally. Oh, thank you. Well, I was so caught up in just focusing on the squares. I've got too much focus. What am I to do?
Bingo. What?
Of course!
We have our first bingo. Stealth bingo. So focused on the squares, I didn't see the forest for the trees, quite literally. Thank you, Keeverdam. Our first bingo. Okay, and lastly, make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. And again, that last caveat might be the Achilles heel here, because whether you agree with him or not, whether it ultimately made sense or not, he didn't bring up race, at least let's say specifically, and not that the square is just about that, but those are just examples. He didn't bring it up for no reason. He had a very good reason for bringing it up, and he told us what it was. So I'm at a loss to think of something he brought up as though it were important that was completely irrelevant to the talk. Maybe there's something buried in there that I missed or I'm forgetting, but I can't think of it. So one bingo down, possible others to be had depending on what arguments I get. So that's the card as we have it. If you have an argument for a square to be circled, please put it into the chat now. Tag me with my name so I can see it a little bit better amongst everything else. And while I wait for that, preemptive heat. Do kids all get traumatized if there was an equal proportions of race representation, since they're all technically minorities of their race compared to others of not their race? I mean, by his theory, any kid who is taught by someone who does not look like them is being negatively impacted. I don't know if traumatized is the word to be used, but our speaker definitely liked using it. But either way, and as those of you that have listened to my streams in the past or seen my videos, nothing of what he brought up is a new concept. The argument that students have better educational outcomes if they are taught by a teacher that looks like them has been brought up over and over and over and over again. And in my mind, and I am more than happy to be corrected, in my mind, the only perfect scenario where that argument makes any real sense is one in which you have racial segregation in schools. Teachers can only teach students that look like them. That is how you achieve the best educational outcome for students. We have heard this argument over and over and over again, and we heard it again tonight. It's particularly interesting that he would spend time talking about and seemingly lauding Brown v. Board of Education, but then make an argument that flies directly in the face of what Brown was meant to do. So, Cannibalistic Wizard, Scribelight, I don't know about you, but his whole speech just feels like he's saying we need segregation because black kids need black teachers. Well, regardless of what the race is, if someone makes an argument to say, students learn better when they can see themselves in their teacher. Okay, that's as non-specific a way I've heard it phrased in the past. Students need to see themselves in their teachers. That phrase I've heard many times. Anything that comes close to that or gets more specific, yes, I don't know what other argument could be made there than an advocacy for racial segregation. I'm not quite sure where else that goes. I would love to be able to ask our speaker directly if he did not mean that, if he's not advocating for that, what is the alternative interpretation? Bridget, anecdote that probably never happened. He describes his teachers having an equity-focused education. Equity, as was described, is a relatively new concept. Is that an anecdote or is that just an interpretation? I mean, that's his assessment after the fact. Does that make it an anecdote? Uh-oh, we might need to get into some very specific territory here. I'll either need a supplementary argument to back up that one, either by you or someone else. I'm not against it. I just need to make sure we're working on the same page here. Okay, so give me a follow-up, either you or someone else. Give me a follow-up. Let's see. Jamie Milquist, he said all other students benefit from POC teachers. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the theory, if the theory is true, it can't just work one way, right? I mean, it doesn't make any sense, because if the only element that contributes to beneficial educational outcomes is the skin color of the person teaching you math or science or history, then it has to go for everybody. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't. Oh, white students need to be taught by teachers who don't look like them so they can learn what diversity is. Because no white student could possibly understand or adapt to a situation where there are people around them who are different than they are. They just naturally are. I'm sure there's an ist that I would be told they naturally are by certain people. Jose Chacon, weightless example, when he doesn't mention of race of his teachers to prove his point that blacks learn from their own. He didn't explicitly say it, but I can only assume from context clues that he was saying all the teachers he named off were black. Except for Miss Norwood. Okay, I should say they were not white. That's the most I can take from his highlighting them and then saying they were all providing an equity education. Now, leaves out vital context that would apply to, and we've already circled that. But I don't know that that is a weightless example. I'm happy to be corrected. If you want to do a rebuttal, by all means. Let's see. Bridget, he put the identity on the teachers to describe how they were good teachers. I'm still not sure that's not just leaving out vital context. Right? By not describing the teachers first and foremost, given his whole argument. I don't know if that constitutes a weightless example. I'm not trying to be, I am being a bit picky because it is the last square before bingo. But B, I'm also legitimately not sure that it qualifies. Let's see. Bridget, an anecdote is a personal story, and those include interpretations of someone's words or actions. Is that the dictionary definition you're getting me there? Because if it is, okay. All right, I'm on the fence. Okay, so chat, and I need you to be, and even though this isn't a square that'll get a bingo, I need you to think, pragmatically and honestly. Okay. Does our speaker's retroactive analysis of his teacher's teaching methods as equity-focused educators, does that constitute an anecdote that probably never happened? Because obviously it happened in the sense that he thinks that way, but is he making up effectively what those teachers did in a retroactive? I guess that would be the probably never happened, but those teachers were not thinking in those terms. So if you think that qualifies, put a 1 in the chat. If it doesn't quite make it, put a 2. And I could go either way. I can see where Bridget is coming from. Bridget. So if you think that qualifies, put a 1. If you don't think so, or you're not sure, put a 2, because it's either, if there is any doubt, there is no doubt. So we got a 1, we got a 2. Poker Pierce, hello. Pete says 2. Seems to be a definition. Chicago Mike gives me pie. Only if it's blackberry or a good apple. I'll take that as not a 1. No name. I missed the argument. Well, the argument is that our speaker's backwards reflection on the teaching styles of his teachers from his youth qualify as equity-focused educators on reflection. He is attributing to them a style of education that he is promoting here retroactively. Does that qualify as an anecdote that probably never happened? Let's see. Bridget, 1. His interpretation is the anecdote that never happened. Okay. I'm getting the ambiguous nature of this might be, I'm not sure. Like I say, No name says, oh, I vote 1. Sheldy says 1. Okay. Bridget. Okay. Actually, the more that I think about it. All right. I'm not going to dwell on this any longer because we got other things to look at. I accept your argument. It makes sense, given the definition. His making up reverse history is an anecdote that probably never happened, because all 3 or 4 of those teachers that he mentioned, more likely than not, were not thinking in those terms. Or he has no way of saying it. He has no way of verifying it. Okay, so there we go. Moving on. Thank you, Bridget. I'm not trying to be dismissive. I'm just like, okay, we got other squares to deal with. All right. So Bridget gets a gold star. I used to get those little gold stars pasted to your forehead if you did a good thing in class. So I'll give you the only ribbon I am capable of giving anybody here. Let's see. Magister, as a teacher, you want all of your students to strive to be their best. Ideally. Cannibalistic Wizard 3.14, describe not like Chicago deep dish with is not pizza but plain. I don't know that I've ever had deep dish, Chicago or otherwise. Peter Silent Katie's 3. Can an interpretation be an anecdote? Yes, but we don't know they didn't think that way one way or the other. That's true. He's making up something in his own, it's his head canon. So yeah, we can't tell one way or the other, but is it true that all of those teachers were proceeding in a way that he believes to be true? Odds are against him. So that's why I'll take that. Let's see. Nothing to see here. Scribelight, name a corridor on the moon base after her. I had been thinking about trying to come up with a floor plan for the moon base and then somehow figuring out naming rights to that. It had occurred to me to do that as some sort of like channel member perk, but it seemed so ridiculous to me that I considered it for like a minute and I thought, I don't know if anybody would go for that. That seems a little weird. And where would I keep this map or this architecture of the moon base? Whole other thing. Drunken Uncle. Ooh, I caught a live one. Well, yeah, on the downward slope, you did. I'm almost done, I think. But welcome. I think if you hadn't seen the majority of this already, at some point you should really rewind and watch. It's quite the thing. Nathaniel Taylor, what about when he brought up being held back? That didn't really go anywhere. Oh. Nathaniel. I think you might have just bought us a double bingo. You guys think so? You know what I'm talking about. I think Nathaniel, you're right. You're absolutely right. He never followed up with what the heck being held back did for him, how that was exemplative of an equity education. None of it. Nathaniel, what have you done?
Oh, won't somebody please?
Bingo. B-I-N-G-O.
Okay!
Ooh, that's a bingo.
Right?
Yeah!
Nathaniel, hero of the day. Holy cats. Good call. We have a triple bingo, one of which being a double bingo on one square. Good job. All right. Well, guys, I'm inclined to call it there. I'll give it another minute here so we get to the even bottom of the hour. Well, a little bit over. But if you have any last minute arguments for squares to be circled, put them in now. I'll go over the free ones again right now. Self-vilification or wretchedness. I don't see it. Feminism. No. Sales pitch for product or service? No. I mean, again, if he had associated his equity philosophy to an organization, to a specific school, to like or a book, then maybe I could see it. I don't see it. Patriarchy, wage gap. Again, he talked about economic disparities, but he wasn't comparing people's earnings or anything. Attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase. Again, almost all of his rhetoric, as far as I can tell, was at this point old hat to me. And make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. It's that for no reason part that is tough to clear most of the time. And in this one, I don't think so. Chicago Mike, does four corners count? No, I don't do the four corners, unfortunately. I just think that's a bridge too far, as it were. So that's my philosophy on that one. Drunken Uncle, four corners normally counts in bingo. Yeah, well, this is America, not Britain, so suck it. I'm kidding. I don't do the four corners. Just like in Monopoly or whatever. Didn't do the thing where you like all the taxes have to go under free parking or whatever. Didn't do that either. That was maybe a house rule. Poker Pierce, Bingo, and Nathaniel was his name-o. Yes, it was. But Drunken Uncle, harsh but fair. That's we Americans. If we are nothing else, we are harsh, but we are fair. With that, everybody, I'm going to call it here. Thank you guys so much for coming to this one. This was a doozy. And I think you know why. If you watched all the way through, thank you for joining me for it. Boy, yeah, a lot to think about here. This is a prime example of the kind of cognitive dissonance that's going on right now. He starts out by saying, I'm not going to talk about CRT. CRT is not taught in schools. By the way, everything I'm about to describe as something that would be beneficial in the educational process is entirely attached to the modern definition of CRT. I don't know what to tell you. I wouldn't know what to tell him. But with that, as I say, we're going to call it there. Everyone, thank you for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have so very little to do, thankfully, and I appreciate that very much. Everyone who donated, thank you so much for your generosity. Really do appreciate it. Everybody who made an argument, successful or not, for a square to be circled, otherwise, I appreciate your input so very much. It makes it so a much more educational experience, I think, and thought-provoking one as we go through these things. Thank you, Keeverdam. Circle the whole card. Oh, you're right. You're right. This was a WTF instance, twice, in fact. So yes, the whole card must be circled. Thank you, Keeverdam, for reminding me before I closed out the show. There you are. On top of everything else, a WTF doubly. But everyone, thank you for joining me. If you'd like to hear more from me, you can find me Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern for the Sunday stream, where I will talk about something. Not sure yet. And thank you, Chicago Mike, for the wavy bye-bye Dogcat Fox. Oh, Dogcat Fox.
Wow-wee! Wow! Wow!
Golly gee, I wonder who did the voice for that one. So yeah, Sunday, 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. And also, if you share out my stuff, whether it's a video I've done or a live stream that's upcoming, particularly on Twitter, please do remember to tag me in your tweet somewhere so that I can see it, so that I know that you did so I can thank you personally, because I really do appreciate it. Again, everyone, have a good rest of your evening. Hope you have a good rest of your week and your weekend. I hope you're all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.